Before I begin today's broadcast, I just want to wish all veterans a blessed and happy Veterans Day. Of course, today is Veterans Day in the United States, and I'm a veteran as well. But we also want to keep in mind all veterans, living and deceased. We're continuing in the Book of Wisdom. It's actually called the Wisdom of Solomon. And of course, Solomon, is King Solomon, who was the son of David. And his mother, by the way, as the Bible teaches us, was Bathsheba. Interesting thing to look at when we kind of see that whole thing. But we want to look at this within the context of today's daily reading, which is actually fascinating enough. The reading, most of it, after the first four verses, which are actually in chapter 2 of Wisdom, then you go into chapter 3. That's one of the options for a funeral. So if you go back and read it and say, oh, I like this, I'd like this if someone reads this and say, oh, I love this. I'd love this to be in my funeral. Well, why you'd say that, I don't know, but maybe you would. And you'll find that that's actually one of the options. But I wanted to kind of address today's first reading, that when you look through it and you go and read it, remember this is chapter 3 of Wisdom, I want to address something in light of an experience I had yesterday. Now, a little bit of background. My Friday, Saturday are actual, no, wait a minute, I did that wrong. Sorry. My Saturday, Sunday are actually Friday, Saturday. My working hours as a hospital chaplain are Sunday through Thursday. And so I'm off Friday and most of Saturday. I have to do the 4 o'clock mass over at the hospital on Saturday afternoon. So really I have one day off and then most of a second day. And on Saturdays I do a lot of my errands, but that's something you don't need to know, or maybe you do anyway. So one of my favorite places to go on my day off, and now that I live in Brockton, Massachusetts, it's even closer, is Providence, Rhode Island. Providence, Rhode Island is a beautiful little city. It's a great place, and so I like to go to Providence, Rhode Island. Well, Archbishop Henning is currently the Archbishop of Boston. Prior to being the Archbishop of Boston, he was for about a year the Bishop of Providence, Rhode Island. So he came from Providence. And he started a devotion that I think is the greatest thing since sliced bread, at least if you're in Providence, Rhode Island. Prior to him, the cathedral was locked except when it was used. So he came in and he opened up the cathedral, and now there's Eucharistic adoration there. This is wonderful. If you understand what this is, it's absolutely wonderful. Eucharistic adoration. But before that, you'd go to pray at the cathedral and you couldn't because it was locked. Now there's an irony there. And the irony is that obviously the church is against abortion. We all understand that. We all know that. Well, right across I-95, and for those of you who are not from the United States or not from the East Coast, I-95, Interstate 95, is one of the two major roads. The other one is US Route 1 that go from Maine to Florida. They cover the entire East Coast, well, the eastern states, not actually on the coast. Parts of it are, but not generally. From Maine all the way down to Florida, the entire way. So this is a major thoroughfare, and it's obviously used by a tremendous amount of traffic, especially in Providence. Well, in any case, you have the cathedral and the diocesan headquarters on one side of I-95 in Providence. On the exact other side is the Providence, Rhode Island Planned Parenthood. And what makes it interesting, even more so, is there is a light advertising, obviously marking, I guess, is the building. It's a neon light. What do you call it? Not a neon light, but it's a light. It's a advertising. It's a sign. That's the word I'm trying to look. It's a lighted sign, not in so much neon, but it's a lighted sign that as you are heading south on I-95, if you look to the right, you're going to see Planned Parenthood and the Planned Parenthood building. If you look to the left, you're going to see the diocesan property of Providence, Rhode Island, including the cathedral and the offices. So with the cathedral locked as much as it was, except for when it was used, you could see the irony, and this used to bother me to no end, because you had the cathedral locked, so you couldn't get into the cathedral. And then on the other side of I-95, right directly across, is a sign shining towards, whether they intended it or not, it was actually shining towards I-95, but obviously it would just by default be towards the diocesan property. And it would say Planned Parenthood, which was open. Planned Parenthood was open Monday through Saturday. The only day it was closed was Sunday. Now, obviously, it wasn't open at night or whatever hours they had. It wasn't a 24-hour operation, I'll put it that way. Whereas on the other side of I-95 was this Catholic property of the Diocese of Providence, and the cathedral was locked. And I used to go bananas when I used to see that. It used to drive, well, I don't literally go bananas, but I'd be like, this is, I don't know if anyone caught. Do you realize what you're saying here? Planned Parenthood on one side says, we welcome you. And the cathedral property was, and they said it was because of some form of vandalism or whatever he had to close. Okay, fine. But thankfully, Bishop then Bishop Henning opened up the cathedral. And what makes it more interesting, he started this, and it's now being continued, I guess, with Bishop Lewandowski, who is the current Bishop of Providence, because Bishop Henning went to Boston. You have Eucharistic adoration. This is wonderful. This is absolutely wonderful, because if you've ever been there, it's an absolutely gorgeous cathedral. It's a beautiful cathedral. And there's just so much there. So this is wonderful. I'm really happy to see this. So it's my Friday. By the way, over the weekend, Comic Con, which I've never been to in my life, was going on in Providence. So as you're walking around Providence, you see people dressed up as cartoon characters and everything else. One of these days, I'm going to visit this thing. So, and anyway, so I decided to take some time to go to the cathedral and spend time in prayer, because, as I always say, it's always important to do prayer every single day, even on your day off. So I went and sat in the cathedral in Eucharistic adoration. Now, there's a little part here that may lead some people to go, what? There are two religious books I've wanted to read for quite some time, not for conversion purposes or anything else, but so that I would understand what these religions believe. And one of them is the Quran, which I have not been able to. I mean, you can buy copies somewhere, but I've always, when I've had a chance to buy one, it wasn't a good time, and other times I didn't find one. So that's the Quran. The other is the Bhagavad Gita. So there's a bookstore down there in Providence, Symposium Books, and I like to check that out. There's all kinds of stuff there. And so I went to Symposium Books. It's a secular bookstore. So I went to Symposium Books, and then I bought the Bhagavad Gita. Now, I want to explain this to you, because you're going to have to understand this, where I'm going with this, which is probably what you say during every show. Where is he going with this? But anyway, so I bought the Bhagavad Gita. So, yes, I am in adoration, and I decide I'm going to read this at least a part of this book. Now, you might say, why would I do that? The answer is simple. It's important for us to understand what we believe, and it's important for us to understand what others believe and what is the difference. And the difference is huge. Okay. And this led me to a really deeper understanding of exactly today's reading today. Oh, there you go. Wisdom. Okay. One of the things it says in Wisdom is it talks about let me switch it back here. One of the things it's saying here, hold on, is that there are gold in the sacrifice, as gold in the furnace, rather, he proved them. Okay, it is an old understanding in the Old Testament that suffering leads us to purification, like fire tests gold. Fire purifies gold. So think of it this way. If you want to make bread, you need to put wheat in its original state through millstones. It may sound like a horrible thing to do. And by the way, if you know the song from Traffic, John Barleycorn, which sounds like this horrible thing that they're doing to someone, it's actually talking about, it's an ancient folk song, about turning the elements of what ultimately becomes beer into the beer. John Barleycorn. John Barleycorn Must Die is all about milling barley and corn. There you go. So in any case, you can think of that. In order to be purified, gold needs to go through fire. So there I am, and I am praying before the Blessed Sacrament. And strangely enough, but there's something I want to go here, reading about the first 2 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita, which is more than it appears, because it's written in several languages, and so obviously I read the English. Well, there's probably about 2 or 3 verses per page, so actually you're not reading much in far as quantity of words, because you're actually skipping over the languages you don't understand. Well, powerful look between what the Hindu teaching is in the Bhagavad Gita and what we believe as Christians. And this is important because it'll lead us back to wisdom. Remember, all religions have truth, but we believe that only Catholicism has the fullness of truth. Why? For one simple reason. It's not because of us. It's not because of the Pope. It's not because of the Vatican. It's because our core, our focus is Jesus Christ. And who is Jesus Christ? Jesus Christ is the truth. He's not wise. He is, but he's not someone who is filled with wisdom. He's not someone who is filled with truth. He is truth. You see the understanding. And that's why we have the fullness of truth, because we seek after and worship the incarnation of truth. Do you see that difference? And this is really important to understand if we want to continue this. So I'm at the cathedral. I'm praying before the Blessed Sacrament, which in itself is a powerful experience. And behind the Blessed Sacrament is a cross. It's a very beautiful cross. This is why I got so irritated when the place was locked all the time, because I'd been, a couple times you'd go into Mass or something and you'd see how beautiful this place, and it would be like a mystery because you could never get into it. So in any way, you have this, the crucifix behind this. Now, that image comes back, for in fire gold is tested. Okay, that's actually from Sirach, which we're going to hear in a few minutes. But from that whole purification of gold. Okay, Jesus is fully human and fully alive, fully human, fully divine. That's Jesus. So in that, one of the things I'm realizing is he is on the cross. He is suffering. I've talked to you about what St. Maximus the Confessor teaches, how this is the literal last temptation of Christ, this suffering to get him not to obey the law. But there was something else that popped into my mind in light of wisdom. This suffering purifies us to draw closer to Christ, to draw closer to Christ who is truth, when we understand it that way. Now, here's the other thing to look at. So we're looking at Christ. We're seeing, I'm looking at Christ. I'm looking at Christ on the cross. Another teaching is, it's right there in the Bible, that by suffering, he learned obedience. So I'm looking at this and realizing that possibly on the cross, Jesus in his humanity is being further purified as a sacrifice to the Father, as an encounter to the Father, in light of his He doesn't need to be purified, but humanity is being purified even more through him to be united with the Father, so that we can experience the fullness of truth. We can experience, which is what St. James teaches, the fullness of everything we are called to understand in truth. We're going to talk more on the other side of the break. You're listening to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast right here on your favorite podcast platform. Did you know that you can listen to Catholic Audio Media on the iHeartRadio app? Catholic Audio Media is now available through your iHeartRadio app. If you don't have the app, download it to your smartphone, tablet, or computer and subscribe through the podcast tab to Catholic Audio Media. You can also enable them through your smart speaker and hear them through the smart speaker as well. Just ask for Catholic Audio Media Podcast from iHeartRadio. You can hear them anywhere. You can listen to them as you're jogging. You can listen to them as you're preparing to go to bed. You can listen to them as you're eating and having breakfast or lunch or dinner. You can hear them anytime you want at iHeartRadio through the iHeartRadio app. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out, patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. We're back, and we're talking about this powerful moment of looking upon Jesus and understanding that it's possible that his suffering, just like I was talking about earlier about John Barleycorn, he is encountering this suffering, which we know is the devil working to get him to not love for so much as a millisecond, as Saint Maximus the Confessor would teach, but at the same time further purifying humanity. This is my opinion, not necessarily church teaching. It's just the church. By that I mean the church doesn't have an official teaching one way or another on this. So he's further purifying humanity so that we can encounter Christ. Now, I want to compare this with what I was reading in the Bhagavad Gita. And remember, I've only gone about 2 chapters. Do understand, I'm not going to say, but we should embrace Hinduism. I'm not going to say that ever, because we understand why we're seeking Christ. Christ is the fullness of truth. He is the incarnation of truth. Fascinating little conversation that was in the Bhagavad Gita. And in the Bhagavad Gita, unlike us, see, we believe all things are created by God, including our body and soul. In the Bhagavad Gita, it teaches that the soul is eternal, just as God is eternal. Okay, even though it doesn't talk about God in at least what I've read so far. The soul is eternal. The soul was not created. The soul will not die. The soul is constant. And so they believe in reincarnation. So they believe that souls reincarnate. Well, in that, one of the teachings is that this man was going to go to war. And he realizes, wait a minute, I don't want to go to war, because ultimately what I'm killing professors, I'm killing teachers, I'm killing fathers, I'm killing uncles. And he says, no, I don't want any part of this. And this other person teaches him, wait a minute, the soul is eternal, but the body is not. And so when you are killing someone in war, that you're really not hurting their very core, because the soul is eternal. Well, this is not what we believe in as Christians, and I don't believe that at all either, because I believe in the fullness of truth, and I believe him. But I want you to look at that. This is the reason why it's so important to know and to live your faith, because if you don't live it, other philosophies will take over. And St. Paul talked about that in Romans. In Romans, he said people know who to follow, but they choose to follow other directions, and their minds are darkened. Okay, I want you to look at that for a second. In World War II, there was obviously, not only was there the big fight between Japan and the Allies, the Axis and the Allies, but Japan and especially the United States. Not only was there that battle there, but there was a battle of philosophies, in case you didn't know that. Because the Japanese are not Hindus, they're Buddhists, but they believe a similar concept in regards to reincarnation. And I will assume the soul, because they believe in reincarnation. That's part of reincarnation. Okay. The Japanese were notorious for being really vicious. Notorious. You heard about the Bataan Death March and everything else. And they were notorious in their prison camps and everything else. However, that was drawn off the Eastern philosophy. The Western philosophy is all about we are created by God and we return to God and we are held accountable for our actions. Therefore, we are created, we're not eternal, at least in origin, and we will always be with God, but God is in charge, everything else. And therefore, God calls us to love one another, body and soul. Whereas this teaching in the Bhagavad Gita was, remember, the body doesn't really count because it's the soul eternal, and you can never hurt the soul, you can't kill the soul, you really can't do any damage to anyone if you look at them as just a soul. So you can see that clash between those two philosophies came out very strongly during the war. And because of that intense clash, you had this things going on that people would look at and say, why was this allowed to happen? How would people do that? Because of what their philosophies were rooted in. Do you see? And now when people tell you, well, the only reason why, I'm good enough to get to heaven. I don't need to go to church. I don't need to understand the faith. I'm good enough. It's when people reduce it all to your behavior instead of what we truly believe, then what happens is you're going to see actions and things and words and everything else that people do based on that philosophy. And as you can see, when you believe that you can't hurt the soul and it doesn't matter what you do to the body, how destructive that can be in the wrong hands. Because, Gandhi taught love, everything was about love. So when we see that those two sides, and I'm not saying that's the fullness, what I just taught is the fullness of Hinduism, that's within the first 3 chapters of the Bhagavad Gita. When we see this entire thing come together, we realize how important it is that we embrace Christ, that we seek to live with Christ, that we seek to deepen our understanding of Christ. We seek to live Christ, because that is key to everything not only we are all about, but what we stand for and what we teach others, including members of our family. Do you see that? So and understand that Jesus is not someone who knows the truth. Jesus is the truth. Jesus is wisdom. Jesus, because he is the second person of the Trinity, and the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, they are truth, they are wisdom, they are goodness, they are all these things. They are not knowledgeable, they are not wise in this. No, they are. This is what they are. They are the source of all being, or God is the source of all being. This is what they are. These are two different philosophies. And this is why it's so important for us to pursue this wisdom, to pursue this truth, because it affects how we live our life and how our world runs. Now, one of the things we're dealing with in our country right now is people who have rejected the whole Judeo-Christian tradition because they never learned it. They never understood it. And they never understood the profound elements of it. And they're not necessarily embracing anything else. Some people are, but generally they're rejecting it for what their own wisdom is. And you can see how that is affecting how our country runs as well. Look what's going on right now. You have the shutdown going on as I'm recording this. And in the shutdown, people are using people for their political goals, for their political gains as a group. They're using people, and there is nothing Christian about what's going on with this shutdown. But why is it happening? Because people are not rooted in the truth. Do you see that? So all of this is coming together, and this is how you can see how all of this works together when we live our faith, when we pursue truth, when we seek to know truth, which is what the Book of Wisdom is all about. So when you go to Mass today, or if you've already been to Mass and everyone's sitting around listening to that first reading, oh, that was from Wisdom, oh, yeah, whatever, and not understand it, you have a deeper understanding of how powerful that reading is. And this is why these first readings are so essential. Everyone knows the Gospels. At least they basically knows the Gospel stories. But remember, the Gospels are built on top of everything from what we would call the Jewish scriptures or the Old Testament. And we can see how all gods are not the same, so to speak. We believe in the one true God, and it doesn't matter. No, you want to pursue the fullness of truth, and that is in Christ. We'll be back right after this. You're listening to the Catholic Audio Media Podcast. Life can be challenging, but amidst the trials and tribulations, there is wisdom to be found. Welcome to Sirach II, a chapter filled with timeless guidance and insights from the book of Sirach. In this chapter, we learn the importance of remaining steadfast in our faith, even in the face of adversity. It teaches us to be patient, for trials can shape our character and lead to spiritual growth. Seeking wisdom and understanding is of utmost importance. Sirach 2 reminds us to study the teachings of the wise, be open to correction, and follow God's commandments. By doing so, we can find true fulfillment and blessings. Don't be discouraged by the temporary prosperity of the wicked or the challenges you may face. Trust in God's justice, for he rewards those who diligently seek him. Join us on this journey of faith as we discover the path to a meaningful and fulfilling life. Sirach 2 is your roadmap to wisdom, patience, and eternal blessings. Read Sirach 2 and let its timeless wisdom guide you through life's ups and downs. Available now in the Book of Sirach, part of the Old Testament. Brought to you by the Voice of St. Anthony Parish in Alston. Don't forget to subscribe to us on Patreon. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Patreon.com/Catholic Audio Media. Check us out. Check what we have to offer. Previews of upcoming podcasts. Previews of upcoming columns over at catholicaudiomedia.substack.com. Your ability to comment, make suggestions, even make suggestions in upcoming programs. Check us out, patreon.com, Catholic Audio Media. We're back, and we've been talking about that powerful experience and the importance of understanding and seeking to live your faith. This isn't about our faith is better than their faith. No. All religions have some element of the truth. We have the fullness of truth for one simple reason, not because we are Catholic, but because we seek to know Christ, and Christ is the incarnation of truth. He is the way, the truth, and the life. Remember what Jesus says, the truth will set you free. Well, this also brings in what goes wrong when we solely turn everything to do with our faith into a moral code. We're just in the most superficial elements of our faith when we do that. They're still part of our faith, but it's just the most superficial elements. And what do we teach people? Well, you have to do good things so that you can go to heaven. That's not what we are really all about. We are all about pursuing the truth, and when we seek to know the truth and we live the truth, that is how we live our lives. And that's where the moral code comes in. And so we teach the moral code as a basic, as a primer, but we need to get into the more deeper elements of what it is we believe and why it is that we believe this. And you're going to find this the more we study what it is that we truly believe by pursuing the embodiment of truth, the incarnation of truth, who is Jesus Christ. We'll be back tomorrow. The Catholic teaching in this podcast is reflected and presented as accurately as possible. The opinions expressed are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Archdiocese of Boston or any other institution.